Greetings and welcome to In-Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. Now, Senior Instructor and Principal Percussionist at the Academy for Performing Arts, Rene Aleong, as well as Counseling Psychologist and Principal Oboe player, Jabari John, they join me for a conversation because NAPA presents Izza Riddum, a Soca and Calypso concert featuring the National Philharmonic Orchestra. Gentlemen, thank you very much for making the time. And let's start off with you, please, Mr. Aleong, in terms of like giving an idea, a little overview of the National Philharmonic Orchestra and some of the things that is really interested in doing.
So, the National Philharmonic Orchestra, we are on this venture, and we want to bring another dynamic of culture into Trinidad and Tobago. It's not something that is foreign to the general masses, but in terms of the experience, it's not something the general population would have first-hand experience witnessing in person or in different lights, for lack of a better term. One thing we pride ourselves in doing is trying to capture our sound and what we have to offer within this environment and within this realm, and bring it forward that represents Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you so much for that. And let me bring you in, please, Mr. Jabari. And looking at, I want you to put on your psychologist hat, because what are some of the things? Because it feels as though in certain ways it could be swimming upstream a little bit. It's not so as though that who you feel you is. You think you could make a living or be involved like that. So what are some of those things that is almost as though sometimes you need to turn off that psychologist hat or say, okay, well, let me address it like this because I have that background? What are some of those things that you deal with like that on a daily or a general basis?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the main thing would be interacting with a lot of people or personalities, for example. So let's say whether it be in practice or even for a concert, just that preparation phase, getting your mind in the correct place for that event. So let's say, for example, this concert that we have upcoming, just, making sure that your focus is in the right place. You want to, all your practices that you have to be doing, as well as just making sure that your mindset is in the correct place. That is the main thing, I would say. And just interacting with people different times as well.
Okay, and Rene spoke about, you mentioned something a little earlier, our sound. And I want to ask, if I had to ask you to describe your sound a little bit, not totally label it because sometimes the label is the limit, but what do you mean when you say our sound? And I asked that question because I remember another percussionist saying that they don't necessarily like to play for pan in the conventional setting of like panorama, because they're just so fed up of going if they want to shift it a little bit, but there's so many more applications that he would rather involve himself in. So when you say our sound, what do you mean?
I mean, how do I explain this? Okay, so on a worldwide standard, there are like a set amount of pieces that people play or orchestras play that become like standards. They showcase your skill is towards the composers, it shows what the conductor and the orchestra can accomplish. And a lot of time now, as time has gone forward, it becomes a place where it's now, how do we perform this piece in our way or our sound to vary it, or how do we stay true to the composer's intention? But what we have focused on a lot, especially in the last few years, was really bringing Trinidad culture into the orchestra setting, and how do we make that an international standard? I'm trying to focus on that. So this, as Jabari said, this show coming up is going to be a highlight of what our work towards that venture. There's going to be a lot of calypso music you don't really hear in orchestra, even so far out of these instruments in that setting. A lot of soca collaborations. One highlight we always like to talk about that we actually introduced steel pan into our main orchestral instruments. So you're going to see steel pan playing throughout the entire show. A lot of classical pieces, for example, in Western classical, we have steel pan playing the lines. So that's not something you see anywhere else, I would say. That's how we try to push our sound forward. That really represents what we are. We can't get away from it. So why fight it? Why not introduce it and uplift it?
Thank you for that. And that reminds me of looking at some of the work that Pat Bishop and the Lydian singers and Lydian Steels would have done. So how easy or what is some of the processes of going through, and I'll ask you this please, Mr. John, of going through those lines and saying, okay, well, this line that is here on these strings or on this other instrument, I want to have pan articulated. So what are some of those processes and saying, okay, well, listening and saying, okay, well, I think this one can match it. That one can match it. I think this is the best fit for that. How do you go about doing that?
Well, actually, that will be credited to the lovely arrangers that we have from the orchestra. So, for example, we have our musical director, Dr. Roger Henry. He is one of the arrangers. We have Wasia Ward. We also have Barry Homer, Martina Chow, as well as Isaiah Clement, and they are all the ones who will be responsible for coming up with those ideas. So really thinking of how can we integrate the pan into these things. So I would definitely say credit to them for being able to do that, and there is really their artistic minds that would think of those things and really be able to integrate them the way that they do.
I feel like you dress up the answer, but it's almost as though you tell me, don't ask me, ask them. But even like that though, looking at the fact that there's so many songs that people may have said, okay, well, these are standards, and then now we have a Philharmonic Orchestra, so we want to see how we can put our take, our spin on those standards, but say, no, we're doing something different, we're choosing our song. We have a great deal of songs to choose from. Do the arrangers, Dr. Henry, do they go through explaining to the orchestra what are some of the things they're trying to get across to the audience, to the listening public, when they choose these particular songs?
Yeah, they actually do. As a matter of fact, last week when we had our open rehearsal, they did go a little bit in detail, just explaining that they kind of try to portray their sense of what our culture in Trinidad is. So carnival, that happiness, that rhythm, exactly as the name of the concert would say. They try to portray that as well. And one of the ways they do that will be incorporating the pan. So they did explain that in their arrangement. They try to incorporate that local feeling. And that is one of the ways that they do, in fact, do that in their arrangements.
Okay, and a few years ago, Dr. Henry, I think he liked pushing buttons too, huh? Because there were two songs in particular. One, Stay Up Zimbabwe, because I'm talking about it now. I'm a pause raising in terms of his arrangement of that for NPO. And there was another one, he said, this is not. But at the same time, you might find yourself wanting to stand up when we played. I mean, and there was no mention of well in it, but it sounded very much like the anthem. So you found individuals just almost kind of fighting this, should I, shouldn't I? Nah, boy, let me stand up because I don't want to be the only one sitting down. But even looking at ways that we can cause people to think and feel without using specific words, I think is something that is very powerful. And even that goes back, you see, I wanted to put on your psychology hat again, Mr. John. But what I think we'll do though is we take a short break and we come back and talk about some of the actual logistics. Who are the guests? When is it going on? What time? How people can get tickets and that sort of information. So stay with us. We are speaking with principal instrumentalists, both percussion and oboe, Jabari John and Rene Aleong. We come back after this. We're continuing to speak about Izza Riddum as put on by NAPA. Welcome come back, we continue the conversation. Izza Riddum, a Soca and Calypso concert featuring the National Philharmonic Orchestra. We are doing so with a senior instructor and principal percussionist, Rene Aleong, and the principal oboe player, as well as counseling psychologist, Jabari John. And the gentleman, Mr. Aleong, who are some of the guests? Who are some of the guest performances? Because I see guest performances.
Right. So two main would be Christian Joseph, who's an amazing vocalist, trained multi-genre vocalist, instructor, fantastic human being. Other guests would be the National Steel Symphony Orchestra, NSSO. They are our peers under the board of NAPA. Great group, great as well too, fantastic players.
And one of the things I really appreciate about Seraphim is that he is so intentional with the work that he's doing. So if he's going to be performing at area X or event X, he looks at the context of it and he will choose songs and he will also take you through that journey so you feel as though you've learned to something as opposed to just, hey, that man could singer, that man could performer. So you come away filled with that experience. But in terms of getting onto the experience, Mr. John, when is it taking place? What's happening with that in terms of logistics?
Okay, so this will be taking place on the 29th of May. So that is next week, Wednesday. It will begin at 6 p.m. if I'm correct, right? All right, so 6 p.m. At the National Academy of the Performing Arts, the Lord Kitchener Auditorium to the exit.
All right, and where people getting tickets, Mr. Aleong?
You can get in the box office, right in the upper lobby. If you walk into the front door and you just ask the guard, the doctor to stay right hand side, you walk into the lobby. Tickets are still available for $200 each. But there's also a limited time special for families who want to come as a group. I believe it's four, we get for $600. And that will only last until it's available. So we can't guarantee that until the day of the show.
Okay, because
so any families who want to get tickets, best to go now before that deal is finished.
Yeah,
okay, because I was also going to ask about student prices too. I always advocate for students.
Well, any students come bring their parents so they can get the family deal.
Making sense. But and looking at, are you able to pick all them out? What some of the choices you're dealing with, or we need to wait on the show? Or is there anything that we could get from the name and say possibly this might be happening, possibly this might be happening? Is there an idea of the age range or what gamut are you running? And I'll ask you, Mr. Aleong.
So I don't want to call piece names because I don't want to get in trouble with my HR, but I will say it will cover the range from old-time calypsos, from classics to prominent names in the industry to modern calypso and modern calypso and soca. So there is something in the show for everybody that everybody can appreciate, and I think I'm strong by saying that no matter your age group, you will enjoy the entire set list.
Thank you so much. Mr. John, how important is it that we are able to love up our own in this sort of manner? Because sometimes we think that a calypso is a calypso and a soca is a soca. But when you are able to, like sometimes when the BPM comes down and you realize, but wait, there's all this music, or you have some different instrumentation in it, you might look at it in a slightly different point of view. So how important, how significant is it that we're able to be enjoying ourselves, as it were?
Yeah, and I mean that's very important, as you say. Good that you mentioned it. And that's essentially what Rene was mentioning earlier in terms of our goal as the NPO to really create that appreciation, from the public. So to see these songs in a different light, not necessarily on the context of the jumping and waving that we have during Carnival. That is also welcome as well. Don't feel you could always stand up in your seats, take a little jump, wave on and but the idea of integrating from a classical perspective, so really getting that appreciation and hearing the different ideas in the music coming out, I think would really create the appreciation of the beauty that we have here in Trinidad in music, soca and calypso as well. So I think it's a really good way for us to really get that idea across and that promote that our music in general.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Aleong. So the family specials all sold out. and is intergenerational, and granny and mommy and daddy and daughter, son, whoever, they're looking at this together and enjoying the music. And so like, and somebody just kind of starting on the first instrument, they dust it off because they get it for Christmas or their birthday. And they're saying, but wait now, I want to do that. How does somebody start to interact with, engage with, or start to work towards being a member of NPO?
You know why? Actually, that's how I started myself, because I believe Mr. John and I joined around the same time. But before we joined, I got introduced to the orchestra by them doing an outreach program or just being invited to a rehearsal. And then from that first experience, I realized I want to do this. It's something I never experienced before. I was always into music, but never into this environment and this context of music. So I decided that I'm going to look it up. I went to school, the same program teacher now. I was a product of that program, it's the Bachelor's Finance program. And you could ask Dr. Roger Henry, for 4.5 years straight, I've been asking him, when is your auditions coming up, sir? So when is the auditions coming up? I want to know. He said, we don't have it right now, so let me talk about, I'll let you know every year. And eventually, by the time came, I was able to audition. Thank God I was able to get through and get through. I did good enough to be part of the orchestra, and since then I've been on my foot running with them, trying to add my piece to the orchestra moving forward. So at any age, you can have an interest in music. At any age to do the orchestra. It's about finding out good teachers, instrumental teachers. I believe we actually have some ideas for the future of us being part of an educational program, pushing forward to introduce children at young age or teenagers who might have a future. There are also other groups in the country that could help you forward, but when it comes to National Philharmonic Orchestra, we still have to wait for our audition process, and if we have need for more players as time comes. But that's not the only thing available. There'll be more in the future to come. Again, I'm not getting trouble with my HR, so I can't reveal too much.
What a way, man, whetting appetite. But let me ask you the same question, please, Mr. John, in terms of like, how did you, I mean, you said Mr. Aleong said that you started around the same time. Is your experience a little different? How did you come into the orchestra?
Well, yeah, so for me, I was introduced because I had some fellow musicians that actually started before me. So that would have been playing before. So for example, like Teresa Frederick, she plays cello. So I grew up with playing music with Teresa for quite some time, and you know, I found out about it. So I went to a few concerts. I also attended a few open rehearsals that were that they hosted as well. And I was like, this is, to me, it seemed like the you can see the height of professional classical musicianship that you can have. That is, you know, National Orchestra. It sounds good to see exactly as well too. And as also the standard that they are trying to produce as well. So for me, at my stage where I was at, I felt as though that was the next step in my, you know, classical musicianship. And it really kind of gave me that drive to really, you know, want to audition and get through and make sure that I'm pulling myself to that standard as well. So yeah, quite similar in terms of seeing the orchestra and actually wanting to join. And yeah, that's how.
But I think it's so good that you're able to have this outlet as well, because sometimes you may find yourself learning an instrument, and because you don't necessarily see avenues, you're kind of pigeonholed into being a hobbyist. So the opportunity to be able to stretch your wings among like-minded individuals, holding each other to account, because if you find that your notes a little flat or sharp, people want to talk to you about it, and you want to be your worst critic, so that nobody else have to tell you about yourself and your play. And really, gentlemen, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing. Looking forward to it. Izza Riddum. It is on the 29th, May 29th at 6 p.m. at the National Academy for the Performing Arts. It's a Soca and Calypso concert featuring the National Philharmonic Orchestra. There's also NSSO, the National Steel Symphony Orchestra, as well as Chrison, Seraphine, Joseph. You don't want to miss that. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, this has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you so much. We've been speaking with Senior Instructor and Principal Percussionist Rene Aleong, as well as a Counseling Psychologist and Principal Oboe player Jabari John. Thank you so much for joining us.